Hello and welcome to our analysis of the poem called The Shipwreck by Emily Dickinson. Glee, the great storm is over. 4 have recovered the land, 40 gone down together into the boiling sand. Ring for the scant salvation, toll for the bonny souls, neighbor and friend and bridegroom spinning upon the shoals. How they will tell the shipwreck when winter shakes the door. To the children ask, but the 40, did they come back no more? Then a silence suffuses the story, and a softness the teller's eyes, and the children no further question, and only the waves reply. So the poem is about a shipwreck in which there were 44 people on board a ship, and 4 people survived, and 40 had perished. Right, so the poem opens with the word glee, which is an expression of celebration and joy. And why are they celebrating? Because the great storm is over. Now, the great storm, it implies that this is a storm that people remember, a storm that people talk about, and it was quite significant in terms of natural phenomena. Right, it's over. 4 have recovered the land. So you have a very positive opening line, and you've got something that is quite celebratory. But then you come to the third line and you've got 40 gone down together. So 40 people died, only 4 survived. And the 40 had gone down into the boiling sand. So boiling sand, the image there is that the rain is so aggressively hitting the floor of the sea that it's creating a vortex, creating like this roiling, boiling image. Right, the impact of the water, the rain onto the ocean water, it's disturbing the flow of the sea, and it's upsetting the sand at the bottom. The sand is rising and is creating a boiling effect. Ring for the scant salvation, right? So ring for those that have survived. Scant, right? It means little, it means few, a tiny amount, those that have survived, 4 compared to 40. Toll for the bonny souls. Toll, it is a symbolism of death and mourning and grief. You'll ring the bell for something good, and you'll toll very mournfully the church bells to remember those that have died. Who has died? A neighbor, a friend, and a bridegroom. So in this image, listener, it shows the degree of attachment to the people who have died. It shows how in line 7 nobody survived the grief and the loss of this shipwreck. Even if it was just a neighbor, it was somebody that you lost, so a neighbor who you may be acquainted with, right? And you know, and you grew up with. A friend suggests a more emotional tie, a more close tie, and so this pain would be a little more acute. But the most heartbreaking image is the idea of a bridegroom. You know, there are people who have lost husbands there on the boat, but the most sad one is the new groom, somebody who had just gotten married and he had looked forward to a life of marital happiness, just starting off their life together. So there's a bride who's waiting on the shore for a groom that is not going to return. So line 7, the mood for the reader. Remember that tone refers to how the speaker is feeling in the poem, and mood refers to how we as the reader or the listener feels. And line 7 is very, very symbolic, and it affects us very emotionally because the image of a neighbor and of a friend is sad and mournful. But the image of a new bridegroom, somebody who's just gotten married and had the promise of a life together with his bride, it's very, very heartbreaking. Where are the neighbor, the friend, and the bridegroom? They are spinning upon the shoals, right? So they are, their bodies, they are spinning in the ocean. Now, this suggests, listener, that the shipwreck took place very close to the shore, which makes it even more heartbreaking because they were so close to home. They were so close to salvation. They were so close to safety, but it just wasn't meant to be. Their survival just was not guaranteed. Remember that nature, the destructive force of nature, cannot be held back by anything man-made. Right? Stanza 3. How they will tell the shipwreck when winter shakes the door. They're going to tell the story about the shipwreck to the children as passing time in the winter time when the cold wind is shaking at the door. So you can get the image of people sitting around listening to an older person telling the story about the shipwreck that took place during that great storm. and they're passing the time telling stories even as the winter is shaking the door. And the shaking of the door by the winter wind, it's very closely related to the destructive force of nature that caused the shipwreck in the first place. So the power of nature and the force of nature is a theme that runs throughout the poem, right? And it shows how nature is no respecter of human suffering. It's not going to soften itself just because there's a bridegroom or a friend or a neighbor or some children who need to be spared from the pain of death and grief and loss. So winter shaking the door ties in very closely with the destructive force of nature that created the storm and claimed those 40 souls. The children will ask, but the 40, did they come back no more? This question is bittersweet because children in their innocence are not going to understand the impact of that question. Years and years after, this young bride is still going to feel the pain of that loss, the grief of that loss. But the children in their innocence cannot understand just how impactful, just how deep that grief is. And so they're going to ask, but the 40 people, are they not going to come back anymore? And the answer is obviously no. But the impact that it's going to have on the speaker comes back later. Then a silence suffuses the story, right? The speaker stops telling the story and he or she goes quiet. Got lots of S's here. The storyteller is going to go quiet, and his voice and his eyes are going to become soft with that emotion of the loss. Maybe he lost a neighbor, maybe he lost a friend, maybe he or she lost a bridegroom. They are going to be affected very emotionally by the story when the children ask, what about them? All right, because the grief for these people who survived is going to be very fresh even after years and years have gone. And the children no further question. So the kids are going to see that they've affected the storyteller emotionally. And the storyteller is not really forthcoming because he's carried away or she is carried away by their memories of that great storm that took place. Or it could be that the children are going to grow up and they're not going to ask anymore about this. And then the next generation of children are going to remember that great storm. And it's going to be another storyteller that tells them about the neighbor or the friend or the bridegroom that they have lost in that storm. And only the waves reply. So when the silence comes over the story and the children are waiting for an answer, the only thing you could hear in the background are the waves, right? Moving in its endless, eternal motion. Again, that power of nature. Nature is not going to stop and feel the teller's pain. Nature is not going to stop and feel pity for the children who may have lost someone in that storm. And so once again, line number 16 is going to reinforce the idea that nature is all-powerful and even destructive at times, but it's not going to stop being powerful just to cater for human loss and human grief. So you could hear in the background of this storytelling setting that the waves will continue to move as though nothing has happened, because the waves are not going to mourn the loss the way the humans are going to mourn the loss. So you have the first line that says, "Glee, the great storm is over." So rejoice because the storm is over. But you've got that reminder, that haunting reminder that the waves will continue to move backward and forward, almost waiting for its next victim. And that's a very haunting and a very frightening and disturbing thought, that nature is almost waiting to claim its next victim, whether it's a neighbor or a friend or a bridegroom. And the children that grow up are also going to be people who lose their loved ones, or maybe even be themselves the loved ones that get lost on that ocean. All right, in a separate video, I'm going to explore some very frequently asked questions that appear for this poem in the exam, and that will be in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like and share the videos, and let me know in the comments if you'd like me to add anything or expand on anything. I will continue with this series of poetry, so until the next time, bye-bye.